A police officer facing a death sentence for a crime he vehemently denies committing finds himself running out of time. His loyal German Shepherd Atlas refuses to give up hope, sensing a truth that remains hidden to everyone else. Then, mere days before the scheduled execution, the dog's extraordinary actions trigger a chain of unexpected events, leading to a stunning revelation that could potentially overturn everything. The desperate question looms: can the buried truth surface swiftly enough to spare his life? And what profound secret lies concealed accessible only through the unique intuition of his canine companion? Before delving into this gripping narrative, share in the comments below where in the world you're joining us from today. If this story resonates with you, remember to subscribe to our channel. The courtroom hummed under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, casting stark shadows as Owen Cooper sat rigidly in the defendant's chair. His police training did little to quell the frantic beat of his heart, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the wooden armrest. The jury entered, their expressions carefully guarded, eyes avoiding his. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Martinez's voice pierced the heavy silence. "We have, Your Honor." The foreman rose, a slight tremor in his hands as he held the paper. Owen's gaze swept the room, taking in every detail with practiced precision. His attorney, James Bennett, stared down at his notepad, his posture radiating defeat. Across the aisle, District Attorney Peterson permitted himself a faint, smug smile. In the rear seating, Ava Mitchell remained perfectly still, her face an unreadable mask. She had been his partner for 5 years, yet in this moment, she felt like a complete stranger. In the matter of the state versus Owen Cooper on the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. The word struck Owen like a physical blow. A ripple of murmurs and gasps spread through the crowded room. The jury recommends death by lethal injection. The foreman continued, his voice cracking slightly under the weight of the words. Owen's jaw clenched painfully. His mind replayed the evidence that had sealed his fate, the gunshot residue detected on his hands, the blurry security footage allegedly showing someone resembling him entering Daniel West's apartment, the witness who swore she'd seen him there that night. It was all too perfect, impeccably arranged, but he knew the undeniable truth: he had not killed Daniel West. Bailiffs approached, handcuffs ready. Owen rose slowly, his limbs feeling heavy and unresponsive as they guided him toward the exit. He caught Ava's eye. She sat upright, seemingly composed, but a fleeting expression crossed her face, perhaps doubt or a hint of regret. Outside the courthouse doors, Atlas waited with his temporary handler. The German Shepherd's ears perked up instantly at the sound of the heavy doors opening. The moment Owen appeared, shackled, Atlas's body tensed. He let out a sharp bark, straining against his leash with such force that the handler stumbled forward. "Easy there, boy," the handler murmured, struggling to restrain him. Atlas's barks grew increasingly frantic as Owen was escorted towards the prisoner transport van. The dog sensed the profound wrongness of the situation, but Owen couldn't bring himself to look back as the van doors slammed shut. Later that night, Owen lay on the thin mattress in his cell, his gaze fixed on the gray ceiling. The grim reality of his predicament crashed over him in waves. Death row. He was condemned to die for a crime he did not commit. Across town, Ava unlocked her apartment door, Atlas trailing behind her. She told herself this was merely a temporary arrangement until other provisions could be made for the dog. But Atlas seemed to have a different agenda. He paced restlessly between the door and the window, his nails clicking on the hardwood floor. Every few minutes he would pause, whining softly, his eyes fixed on Ava with a look of desperate longing. "He's not coming back, boy," she whispered gently. But Atlas simply resumed his anxious circuit, waiting for a master who would not return. The heavy metal door of cell 2-187 slammed shut with a hollow clang that seemed to resonate deep within Owen's bones. The cramped space felt suffocating, bare concrete walls, a narrow cot with a thin mattress, and a stainless steel toilet sink unit that had seen better days. There was no window, only the perpetual, unforgiving buzz of artificial light overhead. "Welcome home, pig," a voice jeered from down the block, followed by cruel laughter and more taunts. The voices eventually faded into a distant mocking hum as Owen stood motionless in the center of his cell, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. This was death row, his brutal new reality. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. A guard appeared, sliding a plastic food tray through the slot without a word. Owen stared at the unappetizing gray mass resembling meatloaf, the lumpy potatoes, the wilted vegetables. His stomach churned. He pushed the tray aside and sat on his cot, gazing at the blank wall. His attorney would file an appeal, of course. That was standard procedure. But Owen knew the grim statistics. Death row appeals rarely succeeded. The thought hit him with chilling certainty. He might genuinely die here, strapped to a table with poison flowing through his veins for a murder he didn't commit. Meanwhile, across the city, Ava watched Atlas pace her apartment for the third consecutive hour. His food bowl remained untouched, his water bowl barely disturbed. The German shepherd's nails clicked rhythmically against the hardwood as he moved from the door to the window and back again, occasionally letting out soft whines that tugged at her heart. "Come on, boy," she finally said, grabbing his leash. "Let's get some fresh air." Atlas perked up at the sight of the leash, but as soon as they were on the sidewalk, he took the lead. He pulled hard, nearly yanking the leash from her hand, heading with determined urgency toward the waterfront. "Atlas, heel," she commanded, but the dog ignored her. They hadn't been to the docks in months, not since that last case she'd worked alongside Owen. Atlas dragged her past the warehouses, his nose working furiously, moving with a focus that made her uneasy. This wasn't just a dog following old patrol routes. This felt different, purposeful. In his cell, Owen lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying the events of his last day of freedom. He had been following leads on Daniel West's murder, reviewing security footage from nearby businesses. Something about the timeline hadn't made sense. Then, without warning, SWAT teams had surrounded him, weapons drawn. No explanation, no opportunity to speak, just handcuffs and immediate custody. He turned onto his side, the thin mattress offering little comfort. None of it added up. The evidence against him had materialized seemingly out of nowhere, perfectly assembled and overwhelmingly damning. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to put him in this cell. The question that tormented him wasn't whether he'd been framed. He knew with absolute certainty that he had been. The real questions were who had done this to him and why they were so desperate for him to take the fall. The first hint of dawn had not yet appeared when Ava was startled awake by Atlas's persistent whining. She rolled over, squinting at the clock, 4:37 a.m. The German shepherd stood by her bed, his tail low, emitting that same distressed sound that had become all too familiar over the past 2 days. "Atlas, please," she mumbled, rubbing her face. But the dog wouldn't settle. He paced between her bed and the door, his nails clicking on the floor with increasing urgency. With a sigh, Ava threw back the covers. "All right, you win." She pulled a jacket on over her pajamas and grabbed his leash. Atlas practically dragged her down the 3 flights of stairs to the street. The city was eerily quiet at this hour, save for the distant rumble of a delivery truck. Atlas pulled hard on the leash, heading straight for the waterfront once more. Ava's feet dragged behind him as she followed the cold morning air biting at her cheeks. "What is it with you in the docks lately?" she asked, but Atlas paid her no mind, his nose working diligently as he led her past the chain-link fence and deeper into the industrial area. They stopped near an abandoned warehouse, its windows broken walls covered in graffiti. Atlas circled a specific spot near the loading dock, sniffing the ground with intense focus. Ava watched him, perplexed by his single-minded behavior. Then something caught her eye, a small piece of fabric partially buried in the dirt. Kneeling down, she carefully retrieved it. The material was rough and thick with charred edges that crumbled at her touch. It felt vaguely familiar, like the heavy-duty uniform fabric used in police gear. Later that night, Ava spread crime scene photos across her kitchen table. Her coffee had long since gone cold as she meticulously studied every detail. Daniel West's body had been found wearing a dark jacket, but it was clearly civilian clothing, nothing resembling the burnt scraps she'd found. She held the fabric up to the light. The weave was distinctive industrial grade, exactly like the material used for police tactical vests. Her heart began to race as the implications started to register. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was her friend Marcus, a court clerk, who owed her a favor. "Got that update you wanted," he said, handing her a manila envelope. "Owen's appeal was denied this morning." Across town in his cell, Owen sat perfectly still as his attorney delivered the same news. The lawyer's words faded into background noise, technical jargon about procedural issues and insufficient grounds for appeal. "We anticipated this possibility," the attorney said cautiously, "but this is only the initial step. We can still file—" "Save it!" Owen cut him off, his voice steady, betraying none of the anger churning within. "We both know how this works." He had expected this outcome. It was all part of a calculated plan. Whoever had set him up had covered all their bases. Back in her apartment, Ava turned the scrap of fabric over and over in her hands. Taking this to the police department would be futile. They had closed ranks the moment Owen was arrested. The case was officially closed, filed away, forgotten. Atlas lay at her feet, his ears suddenly perking up. A low growl rumbled in his chest as she examined the burnt cloth again. Something about this piece of evidence sent a chill down her spine. Something was profoundly, disturbingly wrong. The morning air was thick with fog as Ava pulled into the empty parking lot near the docks. Atlas sat in the passenger seat, ears forward, his focus absolute. This time she came prepared with an evidence collection kit she'd kept from her detective days: latex gloves, small plastic bags, and basic tools. "Okay, boy," she said, clipping on his leash. "Show me what I missed." Atlas led her directly to the same spot by the warehouse, his nose diligently working the ground in tight circles. Ava knelt beside him, pulling on her gloves. The burnt fabric had been here. What else might she uncover? She began carefully clearing away loose dirt and debris. That's when she saw it, the glint of brass, catching the weak morning light. Half buried in the packed earth was a spent bullet casing. Her hands trembled slightly as she photographed it and carefully extracted it from the ground. 2 hours later, she sat in a cluttered basement lab across town. Dr. Martin Chen, a retired forensic analyst who had assisted her on countless cases, examined the casing under his microscope. "This is quite interesting," he murmured, making notes. "The striations on this casing do not match the ballistics report from the West murder at all." He looked up at Ava. "And it's definitely not from Owen's service weapon either. Different caliber entirely." Ava's heart pounded. This was it, the first tangible evidence that something was amiss. "Could you formally document this?" "Already on it," Chen replied, reaching for his camera. Back in her apartment, Ava spread out printouts of West's final articles. The journalist had been immersed in a series of investigations into police corruption. Most were unfinished, but one name appeared repeatedly in his notes: Deputy Chief Marcus Holloway. West had been meticulously building a case against him, tracking suspicious financial transactions and unexplained promotions within the department. Meanwhile, in his cell, Owen watched Officer Green make his third pass of the morning. The guard's gaze lingered too long, his questions too probing. "Must be tough," Green said, pausing at Owen's cell door. "Being a cop in here, especially after such a high-profile case." Owen maintained a neutral expression. "Just doing my time." That appeal getting denied, rough break. "But maybe it's better to just accept things you know. Stop fighting what's coming." The words carried a chilling weight that made Owen's skin crawl. Green wasn't merely a nosy guard. He was a messenger reporting back to someone who wanted to ensure Owen never left this place alive. In her dimly lit apartment, Ava reviewed her notes for the 10th time. The bullet casing was proof, solid physical evidence that could potentially reopen Owen's case. But she needed more. The department wouldn't overturn a conviction based on a single piece of evidence, not with so many powerful individuals invested in keeping Owen behind bars. She was about to close her laptop when Atlas suddenly raised his head from his bed in the corner. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he stared intently at the front door. Ava froze, listening to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment. The shifting shadow beneath Ava's door sent her pulse skyrocketing. She watched frozen in place as the handle turned ever so slightly. Atlas remained steadfastly by her side, his muscular body rigid and alert, a continuous low growl emanating from deep within his chest. The German shepherd's eyes never left the door. Seconds stretched into an agonizing eternity until finally the shadow retreated. Ava counted slowly to 30 in her head before cautiously approaching the peephole. The hallway beyond was empty, devoid of any sign of the mysterious visitor. Her hands trembling slightly, Ava conducted a thorough sweep of her apartment. Nothing appeared disturbed. All windows were securely locked, every room exactly as she had left it, but the timing sent a profound chill down her spine. She had just uncovered evidence that could help prove Owen's innocence, and now this. "Come on, Atlas," she whispered, gathering the evidence into her shoulder bag. "We need to leave." 20 minutes later, she parked outside a modest apartment building in the city's journalism district. Noah Park's place was on the 3rd floor. He answered her knock with suspicious eyes that quickly softened when he recognized her. "Detective Mitchell," he said, stepping aside to allow her and Atlas inside. "This is unexpected. I need your help," Ava stated, producing the bullet casing and related documents. "It's about Daniel West's murder." Noah's initial skepticism was palpable as she recounted everything: Atlas's behavior at the docks, finding the casing, Dr. Chen's analysis. But as he began sifting through West's old notes, his expression changed dramatically. "Look at this," he said, pulling out a worn notebook. "The night before he died, Daniel wrote about meeting someone at the docks. He never specified who, but..." Noah's finger traced the hastily scribbled words. "He was convinced this meeting would blow his entire police corruption investigation wide open." The case was closed before anyone could follow up on it. Ava said, the fragmented pieces of the puzzle beginning to connect. Meanwhile, in his prison cell, Owen lifted his dinner tray from the slot and found a small piece of paper hidden underneath. His blood ran cold as he read the message. "Stop asking questions. You're already dead." Back at Noah's apartment, Ava gathered her belongings, preparing to depart. But as she approached her car in the parking lot, something caught her eye: a folded piece of paper tucked beneath her windshield wiper. With trembling fingers, she opened it and read the message that made her stomach plummet. "Drop this, or next time we won't knock." Ava sat at her kitchen table, staring at the threatening note under the harsh glare of her desk lamp. Atlas lay at her feet, occasionally lifting his head to check on her. Sleep felt impossible. Her mind raced through the terrifying implications. The threat was precise, deliberate. Someone had been watching her, tracking her every movement. They knew about the evidence she'd found about her meeting with Noah. This wasn't random harassment. This was a calculated warning from people with significant resources and far-reaching influence. When morning finally arrived, Ava's first action was to contact Luis Vega. As one of West's most trusted sources, the ex-convict might possess crucial information about the journalist's final discoveries. Vega had agreed to meet, sounding nervous but willing over the phone. But when she pulled up to his rundown apartment building, her heart sank. The door to his unit stood wide open, swaying slightly in the morning breeze. Drawing her weapon, Ava entered cautiously. The apartment was in utter disarray. Furniture lay, overturned sofa cushions, slashed open papers scattered everywhere. Every drawer had been violently pulled out and emptied onto the floor. Picture frames were shattered, their contents ripped to shreds. "Luis," she called out, but the silence provided its own chilling answer. Vega was gone. Following standard procedure, she reported the scene. Within minutes, other officers arrived, treating it as a routine break-in. One of them found Vega's phone smashed beyond repair in a dumpster behind the building. "Looks like your guy skipped town," her former colleague Martinez remarked with a shrug. "These ex-cons get spooked easily. Probably some old debts caught up to him." But Ava knew better. This wasn't someone running. This was someone being forcibly silenced. Meanwhile, in the cold confines of the prison, Owen felt Officer Green's eyes on him constantly. The guard watched him during meals during yard time, even lingering outside his cell for no apparent reason. "Something on your mind?" "Green," Owen finally asked during lunch, weary of the relentless surveillance. Green stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. There are people outside who don't want you leaving this place alive, Cooper. Don't make things worse for yourself. Owen maintained a neutral expression, but internally his mind raced. The warning confirmed his suspicions. His conviction wasn't solely about punishment. Someone wanted him dead, and they were leveraging the system to ensure it happened legally. Back in the city, Ava's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Noah. His voice was urgent, laced with excitement. "I checked security footage from the businesses near Vega's apartment," he said quickly. "You need to see this. 2 men in masks dragged him into a black SUV at 3:00 a.m. He didn't run Ava. They took him." The early morning sun cast long shadows through the windows of Jerry's Diner, a faded establishment on the outskirts of town. Ava slid into a booth across from Noah, who was already nursing his third cup of coffee. His eyes were red-rimmed from hours spent poring over security footage. "We're dealing with someone who knows how to manipulate the system," Noah said quietly, sliding a USB drive across the table. "This was almost completely wiped, but I managed to recover some footage from the docks. The timestamp shows it was taken 2 hours before West was killed." Ava plugged the drive into her laptop and they huddled over the screen. The grainy footage revealed a figure wearing what was clearly a police-issued jacket, dragging something heavy out of frame. The quality was poor, but one detail was jarringly clear: a distinctive scar on the figure's left hand, visible in the harsh security light. Ava's breath hitched in her throat. She had seen that scar before countless times at department meetings and functions. Deputy Chief Marcus Holloway had acquired it years ago, a knife wound that had never fully healed. "This could be it," she whispered, her hand trembling slightly as she ejected the drive. Meanwhile, in the prison's general exercise area, Owen was suddenly ambushed. 3 inmates surrounded him, their movements exhibiting practiced coordination. The first punch landed squarely in his kidney, sending him to his knees. He managed to block the second attack, but the third inmate struck him from behind. Owen fought back fiercely, his police training kicking in instinctively. He landed several solid blows, but they had the advantage of numbers. Just as one of them produced a makeshift knife, Officer Green appeared forcefully, breaking up the fight with his baton. As the inmates scattered, Green leaned close to Owen, his voice barely above a whisper. "I told you to stop asking questions." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Owen gasping for breath on the concrete floor, a grim understanding dawning in his eyes. This wasn't random prison violence. It was deliberate, a message delivered with calculated brutality and veiled threats. Later that night, Ava was reviewing the footage again when a sharp knock echoed through her apartment. Atlas immediately tensed, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Ava grabbed her service weapon, approaching the door with extreme caution. Peering through the peephole, she saw no one. Her heart pounding, she slowly opened the door, gun ready. There on her welcome mat sat a small cardboard box. With trembling fingers, she lifted the lid. Inside, covered in dried blood, lay Owen's police badge. The sight of it made her stomach lurch violently. This wasn't just another warning. This was a chilling declaration of war. Ava burst through Noah's apartment door without knocking, her hands shaking as she held Owen's bloodied badge. Noah jumped up from his desk, sending papers scattering across the floor. "Someone inside the department left this at my door," she said, her voice tight with a mix of rage and fear. "This badge was logged into evidence. They're sending us a message." Noah took the badge, carefully examining it under his desk lamp. "The blood is real," he said grimly. "And you're right, only someone with access to the evidence locker could have gotten this." Ava paced the small apartment, running her fingers through her hair in frustration. "We need to talk to Owen. He might know something we don't." Leveraging an old connection from her time in Vice, Ava managed to arrange a private visit to the prison. Guards led her through a maze of stark corridors to a small interview room. When Owen walked in, his orange jumpsuit stark against the gray walls, his face hardened slightly at the sight of her. "You shouldn't be here," he warned, his voice low and urgent. Ava leaned forward, keeping her voice steady. Atlas found a bullet casing at the docks, a different caliber than the murder weapon. Then Luis Vega disappeared, taken by 2 men in an SUV. And there's footage, Owen. Security camera footage from the dock showing someone in a police jacket. Owen listened intently, his jaw muscles tightening as she spoke. When she mentioned the distinctive scar on the figure's hand, his face went completely blank. It was him. Owen said finally, his words barely above a whisper. Holloway was the one who arrested me. He was first on the scene at West's apartment. Owen's hands clenched into fists on the table. If anyone could have planted evidence, it was him. The horrifying realization settled over them both like a heavy blanket. Owen had been expertly framed, and the person responsible was one of the most powerful men in the entire department. As Ava walked back to her car after the tense visit, her phone buzzed in her pocket. The message on the screen made her blood run cold. This is your final warning. Next time the dog dies first. She looked over at Atlas sitting patiently in the passenger seat. His tail wagged slightly at her appearance, completely oblivious to the chilling threat. Ava's hands tightened on the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. They had just escalated this. They had made it personal. Ava sat motionless in her car outside the prison, her eyes fixed on the glowing screen of her phone. The threat was brutally clear. This is your final warning. Next time the dog dies first. Her knuckles whitened as she gripped the steering wheel, a potent mix of rage and fear surging in her chest. Atlas whined softly from the passenger seat, sensing her profound distress. This was no longer just about proving Owen's innocence. Now they were threatening her loyal partner. Without a second's hesitation, she started the car and drove directly to the outskirts of town where her old mentor lived. Detective Ray Callahan's house was modest but well-maintained, with discreet security cameras positioned at every corner. He answered the door before she could even knock, his weathered face etched with immediate concern. "You look like hell, kid," Ray said, ushering her and Atlas inside. In his cluttered living room, Ava laid out everything: the bullet casing Atlas had found, Vega's sudden disappearance, the security footage showing someone with Holloway's unmistakable scar. Ray listened in silence, occasionally jotting notes in a small notebook. When she finished, Ray leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face tiredly. "You're about to go to war with people who are used to winning, Ava. Holloway has connections in every precinct, every courthouse. He seems untouchable." "No one is untouchable," Ava replied firmly, her voice resolute. "I need you to dig into his past. There has to be something, anything we can use to expose him." Meanwhile, inside, the prison guards escorted Owen through dimly lit corridors to a different cell block. The official reason cited was security concerns, but Owen knew the truth. His new cell was smaller, darker, and came with an unwelcome surprise: a cellmate. Victor Crane sat on the bottom bunk, his prison-pale skin marked with faded tattoos. Owen recognized him instantly, a former cop from Holloway's unit, convicted of murder 3 years prior. As soon as the guards departed, Crane slowly rose, moving close to Owen. His breath was hot against Owen's ear as he whispered menacingly, "You're not getting out of here alive." Back at Ray's house, Ava gathered her notes, preparing to leave. She checked her phone one last time and froze. A new message had arrived with an attachment. When she opened it, her stomach dropped. It was a photo of her apartment door taken from just outside the peephole, centered in the frame like a target. Ava's hands trembled violently on the steering wheel as she sped towards home, her mind racing faster than the car. Atlas sat rigid in the passenger seat, his ears twitching at every sound, acutely aware of her escalating fear. The German Shepherd's usual calm demeanor had been replaced by an intense alertness that made the hairs on the back of Ava's neck stand on end. She parked across the street from her apartment building, meticulously scanning the area. Nothing appeared out of place. No suspicious vehicles, no figures lurking in the shadows. But that photo of her door was undeniable proof someone had been here very recently. "Stay close," she whispered to Atlas as they made their way inside. Drawing her gun, Ava methodically cleared each room of her apartment. The living room was undisturbed. The bedroom was exactly as she'd left it. But when she reached the kitchen, her breath hitched in her throat. There on her wooden table sat a manila envelope that had most certainly not been there before. With gloved hands, she cautiously opened it. Crime scene photos spilled out stark, brutal images from Daniel West's murder scene. Her stomach churned as she recognized details that had never been released to the public: the precise position of West's body, the angle of the gunshot wound, even the scattered papers around his desk. Among the photos was a simple white note card. The message was typed in plain black letters: "Stop digging or you'll end up just like him." Ava's mind reeled. These photographs came directly from the official case file files that only someone with police clearance could access. The horrifying realization struck her like a physical blow. Someone inside the department was monitoring her every move. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and called Noah. "Meet me at the Red Pine Motel outside the city," she said quietly. "Room 115, and Noah, make absolutely sure you're not followed." The Red Pine Motel was precisely the kind of place people went when they needed to disappear: peeling paint, a flickering neon sign, and not a single security camera in sight. It was perfect for their purposes. Ava arrived first, checking in under a false name, while Atlas kept watch. Noah showed up 20 minutes later, his laptop bag clutched tightly to his chest. His eyes were wide with a mix of excitement and apprehension despite the late hour. "I got into the police personnel files," he said as soon as the door closed behind him. "Holloway's records. Something is definitely wrong. His travel logs for the night West was killed don't match his official reports. He claimed he was at a conference in Springfield, but his vehicle GPS puts him right here in the city." Ava spread the crime scene photos across the bed. "These were left in my apartment. Someone's trying to intimidate us into backing down." They began connecting the dots, laying out everything they knew about West's murder, Holloway's apparent involvement in Owen's frame-up. Atlas lay near the door, appearing relaxed but acutely alert. Suddenly, the dog's body went rigid. His ears perked up and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Before either Ava or Noah could react, the motel window exploded inward with a deafening crack of gunfire. Glass shards scattered across the motel room as Ava and Noah instinctively dropped to the floor. Atlas's powerful bark filled the small space, his body tensed and ready to protect. Another shot ripped through the wooden door, sending splinters flying inwards. Ava's police training took over. She rolled behind the bed, drew her gun, and fired 2 rapid shots through the shattered window. But whoever had attacked them was already gone, leaving only the sound of screeching tires fading into the distance. "Are you hit?" Ava called out to Noah, who had taken cover behind the bathroom door frame. "No, I'm okay," he replied, his voice trembling. "But we need to get out of here now." They quickly gathered their evidence and raced to Ava's car, Atlas leading the way, scanning their surroundings for any lingering threat. The night air felt thick with tension as they sped away from the motel, taking back roads to minimize the risk of being followed. "I know somewhere we can go," Ava said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Ray has a cabin in the woods. It's off the grid. No one else knows about it." As they drove through the darkness, Noah pulled out his laptop. "I found something else while digging through records," he said, his voice steadier now. "Holloway made a wire transfer to a Cayman Islands account 3 days after West was murdered. $200,000, no explanation or justification found." Ava's jaw tightened grimly, money paid to ensure someone's silence. While they made their escape, Owen faced his own desperate struggle within the prison walls. Victor Crane, his new cellmate, attacked him during yard time. To the observing guards, it likely appeared to be just another routine prison fight. But Owen recognized the truth. Crane's moves were too precise, too practiced. Owen managed to block a sharp jab aimed at his throat, countering with a defensive strike that sent Crane stumbling backward. Guards rushed in to break up the confrontation, but the message was delivered with brutal clarity. Someone wanted Owen dead before he could possibly expose the truth. The cabin appeared as a dark silhouette against the star-filled sky as Ava finally pulled up the narrow dirt road. Atlas leaped out, first circling the perimeter protectively, while Ava and Noah carried their equipment inside. The wooden structure was small but felt secure, completely hidden by thick trees on all sides. Ava allowed herself a brief moment of relief, running a hand through her hair. She scanned the rustic interior. This would be safe. This would give them precious time. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. The message made her blood run cold. Nice try, detective, but we always know where to find you. She rushed to the window, peering out into the oppressive darkness between the trees. Somewhere in those impenetrable shadows, hidden eyes were watching them. The cabin groaned and creaked throughout the night as the wind howled through the surrounding trees. Ava sat in an old armchair, her gun within easy reach, watching the shadows dance across the walls. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made her muscles tense instinctively. Atlas remained steadfastly by her side, his warm body pressed against her legs, ears, constantly perking up at every sound from outside. Noah hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table, the faint blue glow of the screen illuminating his tired face. He had been working non-stop since dawn, delving deep into Daniel West's digital footprint. Cups of cold coffee were scattered across the table around him. "Ava," he suddenly exclaimed, his voice cutting through the morning quiet. "I found something." She moved quickly to look over his shoulder. On the screen was a folder simply labeled "Insurance," protected by several layers of encryption. "Can you crack it?" she asked urgently. Noah's fingers flew across the keyboard with intense speed. "Give me some time." Hours ticked by with agonizing slowness. Atlas paced restlessly around the cabin, while Ava meticulously sorted through their existing evidence. Finally, Noah let out a triumphant sound. "I'm in," he announced, opening the folder. "Look at this. West's personal notes from the week before he died." Ava leaned closer, reading the hastily scrawled words. Her heart began to race as the disparate pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place with terrifying clarity. West had arranged a meeting with someone inside of the department, someone who knew exactly what Holloway was involved in. The planned meeting location made her stomach drop in the docks, the exact spot where Atlas had uncovered that crucial bullet casing. "He never made it to that meeting," Ava said quietly, the grim realization sinking in, "because whoever he was supposed to meet ended up dead instead." Meanwhile, in the sterile confines of the prison visiting room, Owen sat across from Ray Callahan. The retired detective looked older than Owen remembered deep worry lines etched into his face. "I've been making calls," Ray said in a low voice, glancing nervously at the guard stationed near the door, "pulling every favor I have left. But Owen," he leaned forward, his expression grim and serious, "there is no appeal coming. They are pushing your execution date forward, fast-tracking it relentlessly." Owen felt the blood drain from his face. He had known they wanted him silenced permanently, but this was on a completely different level. They weren't just trying to keep him locked away. They wanted him dead, and they wanted it done as quickly as humanly possible, using the legal system as their instrument. Back at the cabin, Ava spread West's notes across the table, the brutal truth finally crystallizing in her mind. West had been on the verge of exposing everything about Holloway's operation. Someone inside the department, someone with significant power and influence, had ensured that would never happen. Now those same individuals were systematically eliminating everyone who might uncover their dark secret. She looked at the evidence laid out before her, the bullet casing, West's revealing notes, the wire transfer records. Her jaw set with fierce determination as she grabbed her car keys. They were running out of time rapidly. She had to act now without hesitation. Owen sat on his prison cot, his heart hammering against his ribs, as Ray's chilling warning echoed relentlessly in his mind. "They're fast-tracking your execution." The words felt like a physical blow. No more appeals, no more delays, just days left to live. His fingers gripped the edge of the cot until his knuckles turned white with strain. The horrifying reality of his situation crashed over him like an icy wave. There was only one option left now, one he had deliberately avoided contemplating. Since his arrival, he would have to break out. That night, Owen lay awake, meticulously studying the guards' movements through the small opening in his cell door. He had spent months memorizing their patterns, who took smoke breaks, who consistently arrived late for their shift, which corners of the cell block had momentary blind spots. But Landon Green remained the most significant obstacle. The corrupt guard watched him like a hawk, always hovering nearby, always ready to report back to whoever was pulling the strings behind his incarceration. While Owen meticulously planned his desperate escape across town, Ava and Noah hunched over West's notes in the dim light of the cabin. Noah pointed to a recurring mention in the journalist's writings, just 2 letters, JB. "Look here," Noah said, scrolling through department records on his laptop. West kept meeting this JB person, but he never wrote down the full name. Ava leaned closer, her eyes scanning the screen as Noah rapidly searched through the personnel files. Suddenly, he straightened, his face lighting up. "Got something. James Beckett, retired officer, served 20 years in the department." They wasted no time racing towards Beckett's last known address, a small, unassuming house on the outskirts of town. But as they approached, Ava's hand instinctively moved to her gun. The front door stood mysteriously ajar, swaying slightly in the night breeze. Inside, chaos greeted them. Papers littered the floor, drawers hung open from furniture that lay overturned. Signs of a violent struggle were everywhere: a broken lamp, a knocked-over bookshelf, scattered photographs torn or trampled. But Beckett himself was nowhere to be found. Back at the prison, fate suddenly presented Owen with his desperate opportunity. The sound of shouting erupted from another cell block, followed moments later by the crash of breaking glass. A riot had erupted elsewhere in the facility. Owen watched as guards rushed past his cell, heading towards the commotion. Even Green turned to look, distracted by the pandemonium. In that fleeting moment of inattention, Owen struck. He slammed his food tray into Green's head as the guard passed too close to his cell door, dropping him instantly. Owen's fingers fumbled desperately for the key card clipped to Green's belt, yanking it free. His heart pounded in his ears as Owen swiped the card through his cell door's electronic reader. The lock clicked open with a sound that echoed like a victory. He had mere minutes, perhaps less, before they realized he was gone. It was now or never. Ava moved cautiously through Beckett's ransacked apartment, her flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. Papers crunched under her feet as she examined the walls, searching for anything the intruders might have overlooked. Noah searched the desk area, sifting through scattered documents. Something subtle caught Ava's eye, a slight discoloration in the wall paint near the baseboard. She knelt down, running her fingers along the surface until she felt it, a tiny, almost imperceptible seam. Using her pocket knife, she carefully pried at the edge until a small panel popped open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a single flash drive. "Noah," she called softly, her voice tight with anticipation. "I need you to look at this right now." They huddled around Noah's laptop as he worked feverishly to decrypt the drive's contents. After several tense minutes, audio files appeared on the screen. Noah clicked the first one, and Daniel West's voice filled the quiet room. "Detective Beckett, can you tell me again about exactly what you saw happening in Holloway's task force?" The recording continued, revealing Beckett's trembling voice. "The smuggling operation? It wasn't just drugs they were moving. Holloway was running weapons too, using police resources, our own evidence lockup, as a hub. I couldn't stay quiet about it any longer." More recordings played, each one more damning than the last, painting a horrifying picture of systemic corruption. Beckett detailed how he had painstakingly gathered evidence against Holloway, how he had reached out to West as a desperate last resort. But the most chilling revelation came near the end of the last recording. "Holloway knows," Beckett's voice whispered, thick with fear. "He called me into his office yesterday, told me to take early retirement or they would retire me permanently, make sure I disappeared." Meanwhile, at the prison, Owen pressed himself against the outer wall of the exercise yard, his heart hammering against his ribs. The beam from the guard tower spotlight swept past him as he slowly inched his way towards the outer fence. Just 20 more feet, 15, 10. Suddenly, the night air was filled with the piercing wail of alarms. Owen's escape had been discovered. Shouts erupted from the guard tower as powerful flashlight beams began dancing frantically across the yard. He had mere seconds before they found him. Back at Beckett's apartment, Ava clicked on the final recording. West and Beckett's voices were hushed, urgent, filled with apprehension. "There's someone else involved," West said. "Someone who helped set up Cooper specifically." "Yeah," Beckett replied, his voice grim. Another cop, someone Holloway trusted implicitly to handle the dirty work, someone dirty himself. Uehuram, West pressed. Detective Ray Callahan. He's the one who planted the evidence, made absolutely sure Cooper took the fall for it. Ava's blood ran ice cold as the recording ended. Ray, her mentor, the man she had trusted implicitly, had helped frame Owen all along. Ava's hand shook violently as she stared at the laptop screen, her entire world tilting on its axis. Ray Callahan, the man who had taught her everything she knew about being a detective, who had guided her through her rookie years on the force, was an integral part of this sprawling conspiracy. "It can't be right," she whispered, the words barely audible. But Noah was already pulling up bank records on his screen with rapid urgency. "Look at these deposits," he said, pointing to several large transactions, all originating from offshore accounts, all deposited within days of West's murder. Ray's financial records show he was deeply struggling before this mortgage payments, behind medical bills piling up significantly. Then suddenly he's flush with cash, unexplained funds appearing. Ava felt physically sick. The evidence was undeniable, stark, and right there in front of her, but her mind desperately refused to accept it. She pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering uncertainly over Ray's number. After taking a deep, shaky breath, she pressed call. "Meet me at O'Malley's," she said when he answered, keeping her voice low and even. "We need to talk about some things now." The bar was nearly empty when Ray walked in, his weathered face etched with its usual, calm, controlled expression. He slid into the booth across from Ava, ordering a whiskey neat from the passing waitress without making eye contact. Ava didn't speak immediately. Instead, she took the flash drive from her pocket and deliberately placed it on the table between them. Ray's eyes fixed on the small device, and something in his expression shifted just slightly, but enough for Ava to see the undeniable crack in his carefully constructed facade. "I never wanted you to get tangled up in any of this, kid," he said, his voice cold, measured, and utterly devoid of the warm mentor persona she had always known. "You absolutely should have left it alone from the beginning." "Did you help frame Owen?" Ava's voice cracked slightly under the immense emotional weight. Ray's shoulders sagged visibly. "Yes," he admitted, the single word hanging heavy in the air. "Holloway had things on me, things that would have completely destroyed everything I had, my career, my family, my reputation, all of it gone. He just wanted Wes silenced permanently. The murder..." He shook his head slowly. "That wasn't supposed to be part of the original plan. It escalated." Meanwhile, across town, Owen Cooper scaled the prison's perimeter fence with desperate urgency, his heart pounding in his ears like a drum. Gunshots cracked through the night air behind him, missing him by inches. He reached the top of the fence and threw himself over, landing hard on the other side. Pain exploded through his shoulder, dislocated, he realized, through the haze of agony and adrenaline. But he couldn't stop, couldn't pause for a second. He managed to make it 3 steps before bright headlights suddenly blinded him. A black SUV appeared seemingly from nowhere, tires screeching as it braked violently directly in his path. The back door flew open and strong hands reached for him, yanking him roughly inside before he could react or even process what was happening. Back at O'Malley's, Ray leaned across the table, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You have no idea how deep this corruption and conspiracy truly goes." His hand moved slowly, deliberately, and Ava tensed, anticipating a weapon. But instead of drawing a gun, he slid one across the table towards her. "You have one chance to walk away from all of this. Ava," he said quietly, his eyes holding a chilling warning. "Do it and forget everything you know." On the other side of town, Owen thrashed violently against the iron grip of 2 men holding him down in the back seat of the SUV. His dislocated shoulders screamed in protest, but he kept fighting, struggling, until cold metal pressed firmly into his ribs. "You really should have stayed put in your cell, Cooper," one of the men growled, jamming the gun harder against his side as a grim punctuation mark. The SUV wound through deserted, empty streets, finally pulling up to a dilapidated, abandoned warehouse on the remote outskirts of town. The men dragged Owen inside, his feet scraping against the rough concrete floor. The musty air smelled strongly of rust and decay. A figure emerged slowly from the deep shadows, Marcus Holloway. His expensive, tailored suit was a stark, jarring contrast to the rundown surroundings. He looked down at Owen with cold, calculating disdain like someone examining an unwelcome, persistent pest. "You just don't know when to quit, do you, Cooper?" Holloway's voice echoed unnervingly in the vast empty space. Meanwhile, across town at O'Malley's bar, Ava's hand closed firmly around the gun Ray had slid across the table. In one fluid, decisive motion, she lifted it and aimed it directly at her former mentor's chest. "You are going to help me take Holloway down," she said, her voice steady despite the frantic pounding of her heart. Ray leaned back slowly, a hint of reluctant pride flickering across his weathered features. "You really are just like Owen after all, aren't you?" he said softly, almost to himself. Back at the warehouse, Holloway circled Owen like a predator, his polished shoes clicking rhythmically against the concrete floor. He stopped directly in front of Owen, crouching down slightly to meet his eyes, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "I don't care what your little detective friend manages to find," Holloway said, his voice dripping with utter contempt. "You won't live nearly long enough to see her fix any of this mess." Owen's muscles tensed as he rapidly assessed his dire situation. Two large men holding him, Holloway directly in front, and likely more guards positioned outside. His dislocated shoulder was useless, a source of agonizing pain, but he still had a chance, a small, desperate one. But it was now or never. If he didn't make his move in the next few seconds, this warehouse would undoubtedly become his final resting place. He gathered every ounce of his remaining strength, preparing to fight for his life. Owen sat bound securely to a metal chair in the absolute center of the vast, echoing warehouse space, blood trickling down his temple, where one of Holloway's men had struck him earlier. The coppery taste in his mouth was a brutal reminder that this was horrifyingly real, no nightmare he could possibly wake up from. Dim, dusty light filtered through grimy windows, set high above, casting long, shifting shadows across the stained concrete floor. Across from him, Marcus Holloway lounged casually against a rough wooden crate, swirling amber liquid slowly in a crystal tumbler. His expensive suit looked completely out of place in the decrepit building, but his eyes held the same chilling coldness as the desolate space surrounding them. "You really should have just accepted your predetermined fate, Cooper," Holloway said, taking a slow, measured sip of his whiskey, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Now you've just made everything unnecessarily messy." Owen subtly worked his wrists against the thick rope bindings, feeling desperately for any slight give or slack. His dislocated shoulder throbbed with intense pain from the earlier struggle, but he ruthlessly pushed the agony aside, focusing instead on his immediate surroundings. 4 heavily armed guards strategically stationed around the room, their weapons clearly visible and ready. A heavy metal door stood locked at the far end of the warehouse. His gaze caught on a length of sturdy metal pipe lying just a few feet away on the floor. If he could somehow loosen these bindings just enough. Holloway's overconfidence was painfully evident in his relaxed posture, in the unhurried way he savored his expensive drink, as if this entire situation was just another casual business meeting. He genuinely believed he had already won. But Owen had survived against far worse odds before overcoming seemingly impossible situations. Across town, Ava and Ray huddled tensely over a laptop where Noah had successfully traced an encrypted text message originating from Holloway's burner phone. The signal analysis pointed directly to an abandoned warehouse district on the city's remote outskirts. "He won't stop at just Owen," Ray said, his voice gruff and low, a newfound urgency in his tone. "Holloway will keep killing ruthlessly until there is absolutely no one left who knows the full truth, and that unfortunately now includes me." He watched intently as Ava checked her service weapon and quickly strapped on her protective tactical vest. "I'm going in," she stated simply, her jaw set with unwavering determination and resolve. Ray stared at her for a long, silent moment before cursing under his breath, a sound of resignation and reluctant admiration. He quickly grabbed his own duty weapon from the desk drawer, checking the magazine loadout. "Damn it, kid. Fine. Let's go attempt to save your idiotic partner from himself." Back in the echoing warehouse, Owen felt the rope bindings finally give way slightly around his wrists, a small but crucial victory. His heart quickened dramatically, but he managed to keep his expression neutral, betraying none of his internal struggle, as Holloway casually approached, leaning down until their faces were mere inches apart, his breath reeking of expensive whiskey. "Your execution is still very much happening, Cooper," Holloway said, his voice a low, chilling sneer. "Just perhaps not exactly in the way you were expecting." The guards began moving deliberately towards Owen, their heavy boots scraping loudly against the concrete floor. But this time, Owen was no longer helpless. This time, he was ready, fully prepared to fight back with everything he had. Owen's muscles tensed as he felt the rope bindings around his wrists finally snap completely free. In one fluid, explosive motion, he ripped his hands free and lunged desperately for the metal pipe lying nearby on the floor. The cold steel felt solid and reassuring in his grip. As he swung hard, connecting with the first guard's knee with brutal force, a sickening crack echoed sharply through the warehouse, followed instantly by the guard's agonizing howl of pain as he crumpled to the ground, clutching his injured leg. The second guard fumbled frantically for his weapon, but Owen was faster, fueled by adrenaline and desperation. He kicked the nearby wooden table with all his strength, sending it crashing violently into the guard's legs. The guard's gun went skittering across the hard concrete floor. Owen dove for it, his fingers almost brushing the cold grip, when the third guard slammed into him from behind with bone-jarring force. They hit the ground hard, the brutal impact driving the air from Owen's lungs in a painful gasp. The guard's fist connected squarely with his jaw, sending stars exploding behind his eyes. Owen fought back fiercely, landing a solid punishing punch to the man's ribs. They rolled across the gritty floor, trading brutal, desperate blows. Through the violent chaos, Holloway remained eerily calm, watching the scene unfold dispassionately. He set down his whiskey glass with deliberate, unhurried care and walked calmly towards the exit. The heavy steel door closed behind him with a definitive click of the lock. He had no intention of getting his own hands dirty in the messy confrontation. That's what his disposable men were for. Outside the sprawling warehouse, Ava and Ray moved silently and stealthily through the deep shadows. They quickly found two perimeter guards stationed near the back entrance, swiftly and efficiently subduing them with precise, well-aimed strikes. Neither Ava nor Ray spoke a word. Their mutual, lingering distrust hung heavy and silent between them, like an invisible wall. But in this critical moment, Owen's life mattered infinitely more than their personal suspicions or animosity. Inside the warehouse, Owen grappled fiercely with the last standing guard. His body ached from the brutal fight, every muscle screaming in protest, but pure adrenaline kept him moving, fighting. They crashed heavily into a stack of rusted machinery metal parts, scattering loudly across the concrete floor. Owen's hand instinctively found a jagged piece of scrap metal lying nearby. Without hesitation, he drove it hard into his attacker's side. The guard gasped sharply and stumbled backward, clutching the gaping wound before collapsing in a heap. Breathing heavily, his body trembling with exertion, Owen staggered painfully to his feet. He limped towards the locked door and kicked it with every ounce of remaining strength he possessed. The heavy steel door burst open with a loud crash, and there stood Holloway, his gun aimed squarely at Owen's head, a look of triumph on his face. Before Holloway could squeeze the trigger, a shot cracked through the air, sharp and distinct. Holloway jerked backward, violently, blood blooming rapidly on his sleeve as the bullet tore through his arm. He stumbled sideways, his face contorting in a mask of sudden pain and shock. Ava and Ray stood in the warehouse entrance, their weapons trained steadily and unhesitatingly on the wounded Holloway. "Hands where I can clearly see them." "Holloway," Ava commanded forcefully, her voice as cold and hard as steel. Holloway's laughter echoed through the warehouse, dark, unsettling, and filled with defiant malice. Despite the blood rapidly soaking his sleeve, his eyes gleamed with a dangerous, unrepentant light as he sneered contemptuously at them. "You really think you can actually stop this? Stop me?" He shook his head slowly, almost amused by their perceived naivete. "You have absolutely no proof, no real evidence." Ava took a determined step forward, her gun never wavering from its target on his chest. "Actually," she replied calmly, "we do indeed." Ray's hand moved smoothly and swiftly as he tossed a small black device onto the concrete floor between them. The digital voice recorder clattered loudly, its small red light blinking steadily. It had captured everything since they entered the warehouse, every arrogant threat, every damning admission, every self-incriminating word spoken by Holloway. "It's completely over, Marcus," Owen said, moving to stand resolutely beside Ava, his voice steady, certain, and filled with a quiet finality. But Holloway's bitter smile didn't fade. In one fluid, unexpected motion, he reached behind his back and pulled out a concealed knife, its blade glinting menacingly in the dim warehouse light. With a sudden, explosive surge of violence, he lunged directly at Ava. She squeezed the trigger of her gun, but Holloway was faster than they had anticipated in his desperation. He knocked her gun violently aside, the razor-sharp knife slashing viciously across her side. Ava stumbled backward with a sharp, pain-filled gasp, pressing her hand firmly against the rapidly spreading red stain on her shirt. Owen didn't hesitate for a second. He charged forward, ramming into Holloway with his full weight and all his remaining strength. They crashed together, trading vicious, desperate blows. Holloway fought like a cornered rabid animal, all precision and control, lost to raw, desperate fury. With a sudden, brutal twist, Holloway gained a momentary upper hand. He slammed Owen forcefully against a metal support beam, pinning him there mercilessly. The knife rose high above Owen, ready for a killing stroke, a final brutal act. That's when Atlas struck. The powerful German Shepherd burst through the warehouse entrance like a furious, avenging shadow, launching himself directly at Holloway with unstoppable force. His powerful jaws clamped down hard on Holloway's knife-wielding wrist, drawing a piercing scream of pain from the man. The knife clattered uselessly to the concrete floor as Atlas's teeth dug deeper, refusing to let go. Ray moved swiftly and decisively, snatching up Ava's fallen gun from the floor. He aimed it steadily at Holloway's head, his expression grim and unyielding. "You're completely finished, Marcus. Game over." Police sirens wailed loudly in the distance, growing rapidly louder by the second. Ava had somehow managed to make a call for backup before they had even entered the dangerous warehouse. As the sound of approaching police cars filled the air, Holloway's face twisted into a bitter, defeated smile. "You think this actually changes anything in the long run?" he hissed through clenched teeth, blood dripping from his injured arm. "You have absolutely no idea how truly deep this goes or who is really involved." Ava and Owen's eyes met across the warehouse floor, both understanding with grim certainty that this hard-won victory might only be the very beginning of a much larger, more dangerous fight. The arrest of Deputy Chief Marcus Holloway should logically have marked the end of their ordeal, but something about it still felt deeply unsettling. Evidence began mysteriously disappearing from the police archives, first the original ballistics report, then crucial witness statements. Someone was still actively working behind the scenes, determined to bury the truth permanently. 3 more files went missing this morning. Noah said, his fingers flying rapidly across his keyboard. "They're getting sloppy, though, making mistakes. I managed to back absolutely everything up to a secure cloud server." The formal process of clearing Owen's name dragged on for weeks, painstakingly slow. The police department, profoundly embarrassed by the explosive scandal, attempted to handle the situation quietly and discreetly. But Ava and Noah had entirely different plans. They meticulously compiled everything they had uncovered, the damning recordings, the records of the mysteriously missing evidence, the intricate details of Holloway's extensive operation, and sent it anonymously to every major news outlet in the city. The story exploded like a bomb, dominating headlines. Newspapers screamed about deep-seated police corruption, systemic cover-ups, and betrayals of public trust. The public demanded immediate answers and accountability, and for once the department found it impossible to simply sweep the scandal under the rug. Owen's official exoneration came through on a quiet Tuesday morning. The very same afternoon, Ray Callahan showed up unexpectedly at Ava's apartment. He looked visibly tired, older somehow, the weight of his actions and the subsequent events etched onto his face. "I'm leaving town permanently," he said, simply, his gaze distant. "Too many powerful people want me dead now because of this." He glanced briefly between Ava and Owen, who had been reviewing case files together at her kitchen table. Atlas watched him warily from his usual spot by Owen's feet, a low growl rumbling softly in his chest. "I honestly never thought you two would actually manage to pull this off," Ray admitted, shaking his head slowly, a flicker of grudging respect in his eyes. Owen's voice was cold and measured when he finally responded, devoid of any warmth. "You're incredibly lucky we didn't just kill you ourselves for what you did." Ray's mouth twisted into a slight knowing smirk, a flash of his old self. Without another word, he turned and walked away into the encroaching darkness, disappearing from their lives. Ava and Owen stood together on her balcony, watching the city lights twinkle like distant stars in the evening sky. The media frenzy surrounding the case was already beginning to die down, replaced by newer scandals and fresher waves of public outrage. Life in its relentless way was moving on. Weeks passed like a gentle tide, slowly washing away the remnants of their harrowing ordeal. The beach was quiet, peaceful, save for the soft, rhythmic lap of waves against the shore. Owen sat comfortably in the sand, feeling the warmth of the setting sun on his face, a sensation of freedom he hadn't felt in years. Atlas dozed peacefully beside him, occasionally twitching softly in his sleep, dreaming doggy dreams. The sound of footsteps approaching in the sand made him look up slowly. Ava approached 2 bottles of beer in hand. She tossed one expertly his way and settled down easily next to him on the sand. "So what happens now?" she asked softly, looking out at the horizon painted in vibrant shades of orange and pink. Owen took a long, thoughtful drink from his beer before answering, considering his words carefully. "We just keep going, I guess. Keep moving forward." Atlas let out a contented sigh, his body a warm weight between them as the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in breathtaking colors. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Owen took a deep, unburdened breath, the clean, salt air filling his lungs. He was finally free. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the blinds of Ava's new office, casting warm stripes across her desk as she pored over complex financial records spread out before her. Most people, including those within the department, believed the case was definitively closed. Marcus Holloway was safely behind bars awaiting trial in a maximum security prison, but something about it still felt deeply inherently wrong to her. Atlas lay peacefully at her feet, occasionally lifting his head when she muttered frustratingly to herself. Her eyes narrowed sharply as she noticed a disturbing pattern in the records, a series of significant wire transfers originating from an offshore account that should have been frozen and inaccessible weeks ago. "This is absolutely impossible," she whispered, her mind racing, reaching instinctively for her phone to call Owen. Within an hour, Owen and Noah were crammed into her small office, intently examining the new evidence. Noah's fingers flew across his laptop keyboard with practiced speed as he diligently traced the intricate money trail. "These transfers," Noah said, pointing to a screen, his voice tense. "They're being routed through a complex network of shell companies clearly designed to obscure the source. But they all ultimately lead to one single place, Riverdale Maximum Security Prison." Owen leaned forward sharply, his jaw tightening with grim realization. "The warden," he stated flatly. "James Morrison." Ava quickly confirmed his suspicion, pulling up Morrison's personnel file on her computer screen. "He's been the warden there for 15 years, she read aloud. "Impeccable, spotless record. But these numbers don't lie. He's received over $500,000 in suspicious unexplained transfers in the past month alone." They dug deeper into the warden's background and activities. Noah worked tirelessly, hacking into encrypted email accounts linked to the prison, while Ava and Owen contacted their remaining few trusted contacts inside the correctional system itself. The chilling picture that emerged from their combined efforts was horrifyingly clear. Holloway had effectively transformed his prison cell into a sophisticated command center, with Warden Morrison acting as his key facilitator, ensuring he had everything he needed: communication devices, access to information, freedom from true restriction to continue operating his criminal network from within the prison walls. Their gravest suspicions were tragically confirmed when the news broke nationally. Guard Timothy Chen was found dead inside Holloway's cell block. Chen had been a crucial key witness in the original case against Holloway, his testimony absolutely vital to securing the initial conviction. "This isn't just a coincidence," Owen said grimly, pacing Ava's office with renewed urgency. Chen was scheduled to testify again very soon at the federal trial against Holloway's organization. Just then, Ava's phone rang, displaying an unknown number on the screen. She hesitated for a moment before answering, putting the call on speakerphone so Owen and Noah could hear. "Detective Mitchell?" A familiar, chillingly calm voice drawled from the speaker. "Marcus Holloway, I've been anticipating your call about this." Ava's hand tightened instinctively around the phone, her knuckles white. "How did you possibly get this number?" Holloway's cold, mocking laughter echoed through the speakerphone, a sound that sent a shiver down their spines. "I told you, Detective. You honestly think this is finished? You think you won? I'm merely just getting started again." The line went dead abruptly, leaving them in stunned, tense silence. Atlas let out a low, rumbling growl, sensing the sudden, dangerous tension in the room. The federal prosecutor, Jenna Chen, leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful, studying the evidence spread meticulously across her desk. Owen and Ava had spent the last hour making their compelling case, explaining in painstaking detail how Marcus Holloway was still actively operating his extensive criminal network from inside a maximum security prison, pulling strings through a corrupt warden. "We need him placed in complete absolute isolation immediately," Owen insisted forcefully. "No visitors, no phone calls, no contact whatsoever with other inmates or the outside world." Prosecutor Chen shook her head slowly, a look of regret on her face. "Without concrete, undeniable proof of ongoing criminal activity originating from within the prison walls, I simply cannot legally justify that extreme level of restriction. The prison board, with all its political considerations, will never approve it based on just speculation or inference." Just at that critical moment, Ava's phone buzzed again, a text message from an unknown number. "Park, 20 minutes. Come alone." She instantly recognized Ray's cryptic style of communication. "I need to step out and handle something urgently," she said, standing up quickly. "Owen, please finish briefing Ms. Chen on everything we found." At the designated park, Ray waited nervously in the deep shadows of an old oak tree, trying to blend into the darkness. He looked distinctly different from the last time Ava had seen him, thinner, with unkempt graying stubble and deep, tired lines etched around his eyes. "Holloway is planning something incredibly big, something major," he said without any preamble, his voice low and urgent, a stark contrast to his usual calm demeanor. "He's arranged a carefully orchestrated escape plan during his upcoming transfer to federal custody." Ava's pulse quickened dramatically. "How do you know this? How can you be sure?" "I still have some lingering contacts inside people who owe me favors. People who are still loyal to me," Ray replied. "His people are going to ambush the transport van carrying him. They've got everything meticulously planned, the exact routes, the precise timing, down to the second, multiple backup plans in place. It's happening next week. It's a definite date." Back at Ava's apartment, she and Owen meticulously formulated their intricate counterplan, working together seamlessly. Atlas lay quietly between them, his ears perking up alertly whenever they mentioned Holloway's name or the planned escape. "We feed them false information through Ray," Owen suggested, his mind racing. "Make them believe the transport is happening a full day early, catch them off guard. When they show up at the ambush point," Ava finished, a determined glint in her eyes, "we'll be waiting for them ready, with SWAT teams and FBI backup surrounding them." They spent the next several days tirelessly setting everything in motion, coordinating with federal and local authorities. Ray played his part perfectly, carefully feeding Holloway's people the deliberately wrong date for the transport through their prison contacts. They later confirmed through intercepted communications that Holloway had completely taken the bait. He was reportedly practically gloating inside prison about his imminent freedom and escape. There's one more critical element we need for this operation, Ava said, looking down intently at Atlas, who stared back up at her, alert and ready for whatever she needed. He has already found more crucial evidence than most detectives gather in their entire careers. We absolutely bring him with us to the ambush site. Owen nodded without hesitation, remembering vividly how Atlas had consistently led them to vital game-changing evidence before. He's more than earned his place in this, he agreed firmly. They strategically positioned SWAT teams along the meticulously chosen false transport route, with experienced FBI agents hidden at key strategic points along the perimeter. Ava and Owen took their own designated positions, with Atlas waiting patiently in an unmarked surveillance car, hidden discreetly near where Holloway's men would most likely strike based on Ray's intelligence. Through their earpieces, they heard the all-clear signals being transmitted from the various position teams. Everything was now perfectly in place, set like a trap. Now they just had to wait for Holloway's overconfident people to spring their meticulously planned trap, utterly unaware that they were in fact the ones about to be trapped themselves. Atlas suddenly stiffened in the back seat. His ears snapped forward, locked onto something only he could perceive. Ava checked her watch nervously. Right on schedule, exactly as planned. In the distance through the darkness, they could see several black SUVs approaching slowly, deliberately. All units hold position, Owen whispered urgently into his radio, his voice low and steady. Let them make the first move, commit to the ambush. The SUVs spread out strategically across the road, clearly preparing to box in what they erroneously believed would be the prison transport van. Armed men quickly emerged from the vehicles, weapons held, ready, prepared for a swift takedown. Now Ava breathed into her radio the single word, a signal for chaos to erupt. Suddenly, powerful floodlights blazed to blinding life, instantly illuminating the entire area in stark, harsh light. SWAT teams emerged simultaneously from their hiding spots, their movements precise and coordinated. FBI agents moved in rapidly from all sides, closing the net. Atlas let out a deep, powerful growl as the night exploded into a sudden, violent chaos of shouting gunfire and frantic movement. The night erupted into absolute chaos as powerful floodlights instantly flooded the area with blinding light. SWAT teams converged rapidly from all directions, their urgent commands echoing loudly through the darkness, cutting through the night air. Holloway's heavily armed men, caught completely off guard by the sudden ambush, returned fire, desperately reacting purely on instinct. The air crackled violently with the deafening sound of rapid gunfire and the shouts of trained officers. Marcus Torres, Holloway's trusted right-hand man, went down first, two clean, precise shots from a hidden SWAT sniper, leaving him sprawled lifelessly on the asphalt. But as the dust began to settle and the intense shooting finally stopped, something was profoundly wrong. Holloway was not among the captured or injured men. He's not here, Ava called out urgently to Owen, her voice tight with sudden frustration and a surge of fear. He knew somehow. Somehow he anticipated this. Owen scanned the area rapidly, his jaw clenched tightly with grim determination. Split up. He has to be close by. He couldn't have gotten far. They moved methodically through the abandoned compound, checking every shadow and every potential hiding spot. Atlas padded silently alongside Ava, his nose close to the ground, tracking a scent. Suddenly, the dog's head snapped up his ears, perked forward, and a low guttural growl rumbled deep in his throat. Atlas darted forward purposefully, leading them towards what appeared to be an old dilapidated maintenance shed located near the back of the property. Inside, hidden cleverly beneath some rotting floorboards, they discovered a dark, narrow tunnel entrance. Clever bastard, Owen muttered grimly, drawing his weapon and motioning for Ava to follow him into the darkness. The tunnel was narrow, cramped, and barely lit by flickering emergency lights that cast everything in an eerie, blood-red glow. They hadn't gone far when they heard it, the distinct sound of footsteps echoing ahead in the confined space. Then Marcus Holloway's voice echoed off the concrete walls, dangerously calm and mocking. You've been a real persistent pain in my side, Detective Mitchell. He emerged slowly from the shadows ahead, his gun trained directly on them, a cold, triumphant smirk playing across his face. "But let's finally end this little game, shall we?" Owen moved with surprising speed, knocking the gun from Holloway's hand with a sharp, forceful blow before he could fire. The two men crashed violently into each other in the narrow tunnel, fists flying in a desperate, brutal fight. Holloway landed a heavy, punishing blow to Owen's ribs, making him stumble back against the cold concrete wall. Owen recovered quickly, countering with a sharp, hard jab to Holloway's jaw. Blood sprayed as Holloway's elbow connected brutally with Owen's nose. The former deputy chief was stronger than Owen had anticipated his prison workouts, evidently paying off his strikes powerful and precise. He caught Owen with a sudden, vicious uppercut that sent him reeling back against the tunnel wall, stunned and disoriented. Holloway advanced relentlessly, ready to finish the fight, ready to kill him. But he had completely forgotten about Atlas. The dog launched himself forward like a powerful, furry missile, his powerful jaws clamping down instantly on Holloway's arm with incredible force. Holloway screamed out in pain, trying desperately to shake the dog loose. But Atlas held firm, his teeth digging deeper into the man's flesh. Owen seized his desperate chance. He pushed off the wall, gathering every ounce of his remaining strength, and threw everything he had into one final crushing punch. His fist connected squarely with Holloway's temple, and the man crumpled instantly to the ground, unconscious. Ava rushed forward immediately with handcuffs securing them tightly around Holloway's wrists. "Marcus Holloway," she said, unable to keep the undeniable satisfaction from her voice, her breath ragged from the fight. "You are under arrest for murder conspiracy and countless other crimes." They marched him out of the dark tunnel and back into the blinding floodlights where FBI agents were waiting, weapons ready. This time there would be no deals, no loopholes, no chances for escape whatsoever. His criminal network was fully exposed, his remaining allies captured or turned against him. As the federal agents led him towards a waiting vehicle, Owen, Ava, and Atlas stood together, watching the man who had nearly destroyed their lives being taken away, seemingly for good this time. Atlas sat quietly between them, his tail wagging slowly and contentedly against Owen's leg. His long, arduous mission, their shared mission, was finally truly complete. Weeks passed like a gentle, calming tide, slowly washing away the last remnants of their traumatic ordeal. Owen stood in the police chief's office, watching silently as his service record was officially and permanently cleared. The chief slid Owen's badge across the polished desk, its surface gleaming dully under the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. "Welcome back, Detective Cooper," the chief said formally, his expression neutral. But Owen simply shook his head slowly. "I'm done with the badge," he told Ava later as they walked together through the park. Atlas, trotting ahead of them, his tail wagging freely and happily. "I just want to live my life now outside of all that." Ava understood completely. She faced her own significant crossroads at the department. The brass had offered her a promotion, detective sergeant with her own unit, and a substantial raise. It came with a corner office and prestige, but the offer felt hollow, tainted by years of witnessing the system protect its own, bury the truth, and betray honest officers. One morning, without hesitation, she walked into the chief's office and handed in her letter of resignation. The decision felt profoundly right, like taking a deep, cleansing breath after being submerged underwater for far too long. She rented a small office downtown, nothing fancy or expensive, just 2 simple rooms and a small waiting area. The sign on the door, boldly printed, read, "Mitchell Investigations." Noah was her very first hire, bringing his invaluable tech expertise and sharp investigative skills to the new venture. When Owen showed up one morning with a fresh pot of coffee, she didn't even have to ask if he wanted to join. He simply sat down at the empty desk and immediately started reviewing case files with the ease of long practice. Together, they began building something entirely new, something honest, something dedicated to finding the truth. Their first case involved exposing a corrupt judge. Their second uncovered a complex embezzlement scheme at a local charity. With each successful case, their reputation steadily grew. They quickly became known as the people who would relentlessly dig for the truth, no matter how deep it was buried or how powerful the people trying to conceal it. Atlas finally received the well-deserved retirement he had earned so many times over. No more grueling long nights on stakeouts or dangerous chases after suspects. His days were now happily filled with long, leisurely walks, endless games of fetch in the park, and plenty of belly rubs and affectionate ear scratches. The old police dog seemed to smile more often these days, his eyes bright, playful, and content. On a warm, pleasant evening, Owen and Ava sat together on the beach, watching Atlas chase seagulls along the shoreline, barking playfully at the birds in the waves. The setting sun painted the sky in breathtaking, brilliant oranges, pinks, and purples, and the beer in their hands had grown comfortably warm from the lingering heat of the day. Ava gently nudged Owen's shoulder with hers. "You ever planning on settling down?" she asked, her voice soft, a teasing note in her tone. Owen took a slow sip of his beer, a faint smirk playing at the corners of his mouth as he watched Atlas romp in the shallow waves. "Maybe," he replied noncommittally. Ava raised an eyebrow, playfully waiting. Owen watched as Atlas bounded back towards them, tail wagging furiously, barking joyfully at the rushing water as if it were the most exciting thing in the world. His smile grew wider, more genuine and relaxed than she had seen it in years, free from the weight of his past ordeal. "We'll see about that." He finally set his tone, softening his gaze fixed on the happy dog. They sat together in comfortable, companionable silence as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting everything in a warm, fading golden light. For the first time in many years, the future stretched out before them like an open, unwritten road full of possibility, hope, and finally completely and truly their own.